4 years ago, the COVID-19 pandemic changed our world. I'm Tisha Powell.
And I'm Lee Zurich. There were stay-at-home orders and closed schools, mask mandates, and social distancing. To date, the U.S. has seen more than 100 million cases, 6 million hospitalizations, and more than 1 million deaths as a result of the virus.
And for some, the fight isn't finished. Data from the National Center for Health Statistics shows that as of October 2023, nearly 10% of adults who've had COVID are still dealing with symptoms. Their condition, now known as long COVID.
Reporter Heather Graf has new perspective from patients and researchers amid an intensifying push for solutions.
This is how Michael Sievert's always envisioned retirement. Traveling with family, hiking, skiing, and picking up new hobbies as well.
I just become a yoga instructor, just completed a training course.
But at 62, he says those plans are now on hold indefinitely in the aftermath of a global pandemic.
You're just not part of society in the way you expected yourself to be.
Michael is not referring to the strict COVID-19 shutdowns that most communities experienced in the spring of 2020. Instead, for him, it's the long-term effects of the virus itself.
I first got COVID-19 in mid-March of 2020, and I got the test, came back positive a few days later, and that was, confirmation.
Then March became April.
I got horrible chest pains and really, brutal shortness of breath.
April became May.
I was thinking, I'm not getting better.
And May became June.
Some days I felt like I was getting worse.
And at that point, you had never heard the term long COVID.
I had not heard the term long COVID.
And there were social media groups.
Social media groups, people were documenting, writing about these experiences that were exactly like I was having.
38-year-old Cynthia Adenig was among them.
There was thousands of people already. This is June.
And while she, like Michael, got sick at the start of the pandemic, she was unable to get a COVID test at the time due to high demand. So Cynthia often felt dismissed by doctors and says it took months to find one that recognized her chronic symptoms as long COVID.
Inability to eat or drink without having an allergic reaction. Really high heart rate, really high blood pressure, dizziness, crippling, just the worst. Fatigue.
We now know the CDC broadly defines long COVID as signs, symptoms, and conditions that continue or develop after acute COVID-19 infection, noting those conditions can last weeks, months, or years.
Dizziness, nausea, and fatigue 24/7. That's just constant. I have vertigo, and then I have dysautonomia. My body doesn't regulate itself, my own autonomic nervous system. So if I stand up or sit up straight for too long, my blood pressure crashes and I can faint.
In fact, health experts have identified more than 200 symptoms associated with long COVID that can impact nearly every system in the body. And while estimates vary, it's believed as many as 23 million Americans may be suffering from it.
My biggest frustration is just how limiting it is. Your life just has to be so constrained in order to just manage the day.
Debilitating, he says, and yet 4 years later, there is still no FDA-approved treatment for long COVID and no real insight as to what's causing some people to get it.
It's probably one of the biggest medical mysteries that I know of.
Dr. Walter Koroshetz is co-lead of the National Institute of Health's Recover Initiative that began studying long COVID in 2021, equipped with more than $1 billion in funding from Congress. Among the most recent developments, in July of 2023, the NIH announced its first clinical trials to test potential treatments for long COVID.
You have to basically follow the clues, try different things. The question is, what's going to stick?
How long could that take, though?
Well, I think you don't give up until you get there.
Yet the NIH project and results thus far have faced criticism from some patients.
They were underwhelming.
Michael among those who feel the agency needs to pick up the pace.
How do you respond to that criticism?
I agree with them. I really do. I really wish we were moving faster. If there was a quick fix to this problem, it probably would have been found by now. So to take a really deliberate attack on the problem and build something that is this substantial I think it gives us the best chance of eventually getting to the answers and getting to good treatments.
And separate from those efforts are independent studies like this one out of Washington University in St. Louis that found people who've had even mild cases of COVID are at an elevated risk of developing long COVID conditions up to 2 years after their initial infection.
It actually can still wreak havoc in your system.
Dr. Ziad Al-Ali authored that report and is considered a leading long COVID researcher. So we asked him the question that people living with this condition are desperate to answer.
What is the solution then?
3 things: scale to match the problem, urgency because people really need treatment yesterday, and coordination because no matter how hard we work, if you don't have a captain of your team or if you don't have a quarterback, your chances of winning that game probably not very good.
And during a January Senate hearing on long COVID, he told members of Congress exactly the same.
This is going to require a coordinated approach.
Cynthia, for her part, has also testified on Capitol Hill.
This is their thank you from me.
And just below, the framed photos and letters from lawmakers in her home.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 right now.
She showed us the many medications that are her and her doctor's best attempt at managing this illness.
You grieve your health a lot.
As for Michael,
This is how I work.
he advocates for change mostly from home. This dark room set up strategically to accommodate his dysautonomia and sensitivity to light.
I go out very, very rarely. If I go out, I'll be in bed for the next day or so.
Pacing himself and yet still hopeful for a long COVID breakthrough and the retirement he always dreamed of.
Do you think we'll get there?
Oh yeah, I do actually. I know it won't happen quickly, but I think there will be tremendous progress over the next few years.
In February, the NIH announced it would invest an additional $515 million into its Recover initiative that's dedicated to long COVID research. And then last year, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia and Republican Senator Todd Young of Indiana introduced legislation called the Long COVID Support Act. The two lawmakers have also spoken openly about their own experiences living with this condition.
I've been dealing with my own long COVID issue for almost 4 years. It's mild, thank goodness. I feel like every nerve ending in my body's in an Alka-Seltzer 24/7. And it is, I can work, I can focus, I can exercise. It's harder to sleep.
That was Senator Kaine at a recent Senate hearing focused on long COVID. And we can tell you their bipartisan legislation aims to accelerate research and expand resources for both patients and medical providers. In Washington, I'm Heather Graf.